So again, a very good evening to all our participants today, and thank you for joining the knowledge series hosted by NMIMS. This series is to cater to all our audience across the globe and keep them updated and posted with all the new upcoming digital transformations and the newest technologies. So today's topic is on turbocharged marketing, and we have with us Mr. Girish Singh, Head of Marketing APAC for Uber, which doesn't require any introduction. So today's session is mainly focused on digital strategies, digital content, how communication can be advanced and meet your expectations when we talk about the digital world. Mr. Singh definitely has 10 plus years experience in various industries when you talk about finance, when you talk about e-commerce, when you talk about banking, technology. So I'm sure it's going to be a great learning session for all our folks there. And while I hand it over to Mr. Singh, please enjoy the session and keep your questions posted in the chat panel so we can pick it up towards the end. So allow me a quick few seconds while I get Mr. Girish Singh to address the session further. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. First of all, thank you to NMIMS for giving me this opportunity to come here and speak to you about marketing. And thank you to the audience here for taking time out and for learning a few things about marketing, how to improve it, how to get better at it, and sort of how to transform it digitally. The session is about 45 minutes of content where we'll go through a little bit about history of digital transformation. We'll also go through what are the basic models and how do we start with transformation digital, or basically digitalizing marketing in companies, and then we get into tactics of how do you manage channels, how do you manage content, and specifics of it. What I'll try and do is I will try and basically keep it a little high level on digital transformation, and also on how do you take advantage of digital channels for your company. And we'll not go very deep into what are the individual platform or channel specific strategies. For example, we'll talk about paid advertising, but we might not talk about Google ads specifically, given that the audience is expected to sort of get on and understand what Google ads does, how to operate it, and so on and so forth. But how do you utilize and how do you take advantage of paid ads is something we'll eventually end up talking about in the session. So let's start. Let's start with, sorry, you'll have to give me 1 second because the screen is frozen. Just give me 1 second. Okay, sorry, technical issues. 1 second. And we are back on. Now it's working. Let's talk about digital transformation in marketing per se. Like, when did digitization of marketing actually start? If you look at digital transformation, now this is one very commonly used term. It's the hip term since the late 1990s, where companies have been starting to go digital. They've realized that digital or electronic is the new way to work. If you look at that transformation of organizations, of companies as such, it's broadly happening in 3 stages. The first wave was in the early 90s to mid 90s, when companies started realizing that there is a lot of productivity improvement that can come from digitizing processes. That's when the initial ERP system started coming up. That's when Oracle, SAPs, those are the companies which started developing. You had automated payroll systems, HR systems, financial accounting systems, etc., which started coming up. The idea was to improve on internal productivity and simplify internal processes. The second wave, which came on somewhere around 2000s, started on external productivity, which was like, now we have sort of digitized our internal processes. We are pretty efficient internally. How do I start improving my relationship with my buyers and my suppliers and my vendors and so on and so forth? Things like, for example, electronic contracts started coming in, online invoices started coming in, online bank transfers, net banking, payments, and things like that started getting adopted by companies for doing business. Again, the idea was purely on productivity again, that how can I now make us more efficient in dealing with external stakeholders of the company. The third wave, which is where marketing is coming in, is what we are in now. Somewhere in the 2010s or so is when companies started realizing, hey, that digital is a huge channel for customer growth. I can use digital strategies, digital channels, digital marketing, and I can go and sell more stuff to people. I can get customers to spend more. That is a fundamental shift into how business was happening. Marketing is essentially one of the most critical functions of a company because it interacts with the customers the most. And anything which touches customers is super critical for a company because it directly impacts bottom line. And as a result of that, most companies were quite hesitant in changing the model of marketing. How they were communicating, how they were interacting with their customers was quite stringently controlled. It was still the very old ways of doing it. But somewhere around 2010, what started happening was that customers started moving online. And that's when it hit a lot of marketers that, hey, when my customer is online, why do I not start interacting with that customer online? That is when the digitization of marketing started happening more and more. It's a big shift. It's quite the norm these days. But when it was happening in the early 2010s, there was sort of so much conversation around how much should I spend online? Should I even be present online? The concept of online ordering and online payment was still very remote at that point of time. It was mainly for vendors and RTGS and EFT, but credit card payments were still new. A lot of this today is the norm. And digital is expected to be a part of any new marketer's portfolio, but it's gone through a long journey. If I look at how did organizations sort of model for transformation, right? How did most companies start adopting digital as a strategy? How did they start investing in digital, both in terms of people and in terms of money, investment, etc.? There are four basic ways which most organizations took. One was the proactive organizations, where the senior leadership was quite proactive in terms of predicting that digital is the wave of the future and we would need to invest more and more in digital. The key thing here is that a transformation or any change in any company is quite hard to do, particularly for large organizations. It's not like one day you wake up and says, tomorrow we'll start accepting orders online. And the next day you'll say, we'll start doing Google ads or Facebook ads to accept and get people to start ordering online. It requires a lot of back-end change. You need to go through product, you need to go through operations, support, and so on and so forth to ensure that all the organizational parts are working together to ensure that transformation actually happens. And that's best done in a top-down culture when the CEO of the company goes and says that, hey, we need to be digital. Let's find out how that happens. And then every department is sort of tasked with going digital. The second most common strategy, particularly in the Indian sector, was testing the waters, piloting, right? Let's start with small pilots. Let's adopt a small CRM tool or an email marketing setup. Let's invest probably 2% of my marketing budget and see what kind of returns do I get. In most cases, these were driven by some senior people within the organizations who had an understanding of the concept of digital, what the future holds in that sense, and wanted the organization to wake up and realize that this is the way that the future should be. The third way is basically in creating an entirely new department, the digital officer, the chief experience officer, or the center of excellence for digital. A lot of companies, particularly traditional companies, have gone this way, that they've tried to create their organizational structure where the digital experience is cut across and there is an entire team and a department with a senior officer leading it. This is something which is not just related to marketing, but generally these teams look at digital overall. So basically digitizing the entire company, not just the marketing function. And the last one, which is the least seen one in terms of examples, is where the company culture, or sort of the bottom out culture, where people who were on the implementational operational rules started using new tools, starting bringing out new thought processes, etc. into the company. And the company then eventually evolved. They were able to convince the senior management that, hey, you know what, we need to invest in digital, we need to invest in digital marketing, we need to invest in digitizing customer experience. Let's figure out how to do that. Less used one, particularly in the Indian context, I think the top two ones are the ones which most companies generally went about with. Going ahead, now one thing which I sort of want to start this talk with is that this is all what happened in 2010 to 2015. If you look at today's environment, the digital distinction is quite over now, right? The fact of the matter is that today, most customers and most products and services are quite omni-channel, which means that it is quite impossible to separate where traditional ends and digital begins, or the vice versa, where digital ends and traditional begins. So the fact that digital is a part of mainstay, stakeholders or channels which companies use, it's a part of marketing. No marketing strategy today is leaving digital out of there. Is also a point where we are sort of in a stage where it's impossible to divide both of them. This also means that it is critical to have a plan for digital, both customized to the channels or the strategies, pros and cons, and also integrated with the broader marketing plan. It cannot be that you have a plan or a marketing strategy where digital is an appendage, or the otherwise, where you just implement whatever you wanted to do for traditional channels and say that, okay, let's just replicate the same with digital. It is not exactly same as a traditional channel. TV ads and Google ads work differently. TV ads and Facebook ads work differently. Both of them have their pros and cons, and both of them need to be strategized and planned out together, but utilizing the strengths and weaknesses of each of the individual channels. So let's talk about transformation, or let's talk about going digital with marketing. I'm going to start with what should be the goal of transformation of marketing. Like, what should be a digital transformation goal, or if, let's say, you are a marketer in your organization and you want to improve digitization of marketing services there. I think broadly you can say that any transformation in marketing has three major goals. The first and the biggest one is reduction in expenditure, which means that can you do the same kind of work but using less money? Majority of marketing activities require investment from a company, be it in talent, be it in agencies, a creative, a production, or in buying ad inventory, either online, offline, anywhere and such. Reduction in expenditure, therefore, becomes one critical element of marketing. It allows you to do more with the same amount of money, or allows you to deliver more at a sort of a margin or a cost which is profitable to the company, or more profitable to the company. Apart from that, you also want to use digital, or you want to use transformation as a way to improve customer experience. Customer experience is a quite ignored term in the world of marketing, because what we kind of end up forgetting a lot of times is that a customer retained is actually a customer won. And a customer retained is much cheaper than a customer won. So if we can provide or improve customer experience, we are eventually going to improve point number 3 here on the right, which is increase our customer retention and spend overall, which again delivers more volume or more top line to the company, delivers more dollars and rupees to the company, thereby again making marketing more effective. Now, how does a transformation system, or how do you sort of do or achieve these goals? Mainly, what we see, there are 4 triggers that most marketers or marketing leaders or organizations try and utilize upon to achieve these goals. The first one is content. I think content remains one of the key pillars of any marketing strategy. And content means everything from the headline of the copy or the website, to blogs and posts that you might be doing, to each Facebook post that you're doing on your social media, is the overall contextual experience which the brand provides or a company provides for its products. Customer experience, as I talked about, is the next important one. Making sure that a customer goes through the journey of interacting with your brand in the most positive emotional experience, which means they first feel happy about it, they come out feeling more positive after the experience, they are positive in using the products and services that you provide, and so on and so forth. The last 2, or the bottom ones, are around structures and talent, which means organizing a team to ensure that it can work efficiently, and then building talent into the team, which is digital first, digital native, in the sense so that they can utilize those strengths to be sort of better at it. And the last one is around technology and tooling. Anything digital requires technology implementation and tooling, or basically finding out the right tools, email marketing systems, CRM systems, social media management systems, you name it, and the list goes on and on. And then choosing the right technology and tooling is important for getting the right targets and metrics made. Needless to say, all of this change is again hard for a company, and it requires commitment from the from the entire marketing chain, basically, not just the marketing team, but all things which interact with marketing. It can be HR, it can be IT, it definitely includes analytics, data science, senior management, vendors, agencies, and so on and so forth. Any change requires buy-in of almost all stakeholders in that sense. And that's the first step that you probably want to start off with is find out an objective that you want to achieve, get buy-in, and then start identifying which of these 4 triggers I can start pulling on to bring about the change that I want to get to. With that, let's go into one of the basic starting points of the change process, and that starts off with a customer experience mapping. This basically is an outline of the entire interaction process which any customer or prospect takes with you, starting from finding out about the product or the brand to actually using it, to purchasing it, and maybe to even repurchasing it depending upon the product category. What it involves is taking on and understanding the entire cycle, right? The cycle today is roughly about a 4 or 5 step cycle. You start off with just about awareness of the brand. And if you look at the figure on the left, with awareness, you enter an initial consideration set. So let's say somebody is planning to buy a car. It will end up being, what are the brands and of cars available in this country or in the city right now? What are the models that I'm trying to look for? Get into the consideration set. Then you get into active evaluation. Evaluation happens, which means information gathering, talking to people, shopping around, going to showrooms, etc. From information gathering, you enter into a moment of purchase or point of purchase where basically people make the transaction. So you buy the car. And from there, you end up into a post-purchase experience where people are using it. There is an element of loyalty loop. Loyalty means buying the same car again or even referring the same brand or the car to other people. So basically your customers are also are a channel of marketing for you, and a referral is probably more valuable than anything else in marketing today that exists. Why do I want to map a customer, right? Or why do I want to map this journey at all, right? I think the fundamental idea of building this map, right, of building an entire map in which visualizes how a customer discovers your product and then how they interact with the products and services that we offer across all touch points. The idea is first is to understand how people interact across channels. Today, in the current marketing environment and this omni-channel marketing environment that we have, there are a lot of touch points where brands and customers interact. And mapping those out is quite complex. A lot of times we are not able to build a comprehensive picture in my mind or in our minds of how people are interacting with your brands. And a customer experience map tries to show that in a visually descriptive way of how are actually people interacting with, how are we touching them, what are they doing with our brand, what kind of decisions they are taking. The second thing is understanding the emotions that are behind that way, right? That besides understanding every potential way of people, of how the people are interacting with the brand, where they're interacting, is understanding what is their motive, what is their emotion, right? What target initiatives that they have in their mind. So that what you can do is eventually find out where are the problems in my customer experience and try and solve it, mostly using marketing channels, but at times going across using support channels, using operations, using product development, and so on and so forth. In terms of the mapping of customer experience, let me just take a time check. Yeah. In terms of mapping of the customer experience, it's broadly a 4-step process. I think what I would recommend the audience here is to probably go Google this process. There's a lot of literature which is available online on how a customer experience map should be developed, what the best ways for doing it, what are best ways for traditional companies, what are best ways for digital online companies, and so on and so forth. But essentially, if you break down any process, it comes down to about 4 major steps. One is understanding the customer's entire journey, which means understanding everything that a customer does with the brand's touch points. The touch points can be as small as a PR mention or a newspaper mention or a blog mention somewhere, or as big as, a customer who is on the checkout page of your website or in the store holding your products with a card or a cash in his hand to pay for the products and services. mapping the entire journey across all channels, online, offline, direct, indirect, and so on and so forth. The second step, which is important, is what are those customers thinking or feeling at that point in time. This is super critical to do, and it is also the hardest step to do, because understanding somebody else's feeling is not very intuitive in most cases. The way that we end up doing this is actually running proper market research, mostly qualitative market research, which means that you do focus group interviews, you do individual interviews, you do sort of monitoring exercises, you do customer role plays, and so on and so forth, to try and talk people into what is their emotion or what are their thoughts at every step of the interaction, right? To understand, are they positive, are they negative, what are the triggers for positive thoughts, what are the triggers for negative thoughts, and so on and so forth. Then the next thing that you do is basically identify what are the kind of interactions that they're taking at each point of time. Every task or an action has a particular thought process built behind it, which means that a person eventually first the person feels or thinks what they're doing, then evaluates multiple options, then takes a task or an action. Understanding where are those tasks or actions that are being taken place. So let's say, for example, if I'm buying a car X, is the decision of buying that car X happening within the showroom, happening on a test drive, happening within the car, happening after a family meeting, probably over dinner in the evening? Understanding where is that touch point and how are people deciding so that they can go along a convergent path. So it's again realizing where all can I influence a person into what my objective is as a brand. And the last step is just taking a look at the entire flow, setting a stage for improvements in this entire experience process, finding out where the process breaks overall, where people are feeling frustrated, low, where people are not able to easily take decisions. You want to simplify those points. You want to create a positive emotion journey overall across both pre-purchase and post-purchase. This is a sample. So basically, this is a sample for a car purchase process, and that's why I kept talking about the car purchase, because that's what we were getting into. Is how does a person buy a car in that sense, right? If you look at a journey of buying a car, it essentially is about a 5 or 6 step journey. You start with awareness. Awareness is about the products, the brands, and so on and so forth. Most people, in fact, the car is a big purchase item. You will do quite a bit of research as such. You will test it, you will evaluate it, then you will purchase, pay for it, and then you will consume the services or drive the product in that sense, right? What I want people to look at is the bottom 3 columns, or in fact the bottom 4 columns of this chart, right? At every step, what this chart shows is what is the customer feeling at every point in time. Is it a negative feeling or is it a positive feeling, right? If you look at awareness, people get frustrated or nervous when they look at advertising. People are overwhelmed. They are confused with so many choices. They don't know how to choose in most cases. All of it is negative emotion in this thing. However, when people take a test drive, they feel excited. They like the car. The car gives them positive vibes. They like sitting inside it. They like the way it drives, and so on and so forth. That's where a positive experience is created for a customer. And then again, they get frustrated with additional features, extras, etc. Choice comes in, and so on and so forth, right? At every step of a negative emotion, or even to an extent on a positive emotion, right? You have an opportunity to make the emotion better, or you may have an opportunity to make the experience better, right? What's sort of needed here, and this is the third column from the bottom, is basically identifying what the problem is, right? If people are looking at a problem, or basically if people are feeling frustrated looking at advertising, probably they don't trust the dealer, right? And then you know how to fix it. How do you use marketing? How do you use communication? How do you use the dealership, the dealer environment, the dealer as a partner to actually fix the fact that people don't trust certain dealers? Similarly, for example, they might be scared to pay for a car, or not able to pay for a car, or scared they might not be able to pay for a car, right? Again, a negative emotion. How can you simplify that payment experience? How can you give a person sort of a comfort level that their payment or whatever payment plan they're looking for will be possible What is the most convenient way? How can you educate sales enough that they know enough about payment plans? What kind of responsibility a person is getting into when they are paying for a car, be it on a loan or an upfront payment or on a card or on a cash or a bank account? Again, the idea is to figure out what are the kind of fears or frustrations a customer faces when they're paying for a car, then utilizing communications across channels, right? It be it marketing, sales, servicing, etc., right? To fix the problem and bring out a positive experience during that particular stage. Every step that we improve upon has an incremental impact into the overall conversion cycle. All of these steps multiplied is what gets you sale. Every additional point that you improve in terms of evaluation, or every additional percentage conversion point, like say from awareness to research to evaluation to purchase, every point of conversion has an exponential impact that can happen across the sale. So every small detail counts here. The other thing which I wanted to talk about in this entire exercise of transformation of marketing is this concept of customer personas. This is something which is quite common in marketing these days. It's referred to a lot of times, but essentially a persona is just building a rough profile of your key segments, right? Who is that customer, both as an individual, as a person, as a social character, as a personal character? Who is that person who's consuming my services at this point in time? Generally, you start building it by first collecting demographic data, which is you go back, you see your customer records, your invoicing records, and so on and so forth. You collect data from online tools, Google Analytics, Facebook, sort of population analytics, and so on and so forth. Then you end up doing a customer research. You find out, you talk to those people and try and understand them better. You call them in a room for a focus group or something like that, and then you understand them better. What are their motivations? What are their demotivations? What are the challenges in life? And eventually then you end up sitting with your own team and actually coming out with a customer persona. A lot of brands and products have more than one personas, particularly brands which have multiple products or brands which have multiple SKUs can have multiple personas. A same product can also have a variant which is HNI oriented or an affluent oriented or a semi-affluent oriented, and so on and so forth. So you need to get into exercises for particular personas. An example of a persona is what is on the right. It's actually a very succinct example, which is not that complicated. I think one of the things which people get into when they start building customer personas is they go deeper than required. The idea is that you need to collect enough information to make educated decisions, which are relevant for your brand. Understanding the entire life of a customer can probably end up overdoing the exercise, which probably ends up then delaying the entire project and giving out details which might not have been relevant to the entire process of customer personas or in fact marketing as such. So very few relevant questions are easy. Just looking over what they do, what their role is, what their daily day looks like, what are the demographics, what are the challenges and goals that they're looking for in life, and how do they think that the product can actually help them. What is their reason of purchasing the product are basic things which help build customer personas overall. Now, once you have customer personas and a customer experience map, is when you enter into the marketing funnel. Today's marketing funnel is very complex. The major reason for complexity of the marketing funnel is that every stage is in constant change as of today. Because we are interacting so often, so regularly across so many channels, it's no longer a linear cycle where you give out an ad in the newspaper with the phone number, somebody calls the call center, you go and get them to a store or basically go to their home, demonstrate, and then buy the product. It's not like that. Today, the interaction is so complex that it's cycling at every stage. So people are going from identification to awareness and back to identification. People are using different tactics for identification. So there is no set of single channels, and identification can happen because a friend told me so, because I found a pamphlet, found somebody else using it, in so on and so forth ways, right? And it's an environment of constant change. Mapping all of this is tough. And the other thing is any change will impact a lot of stages. So mapping out any changes is very critical to ensure that you map out all the impacts of a change. On the left, on the right, you see a little pointers which I've put in on how should you go about implementing any change. So let's say you have built a customer experience map, you've built a customer persona, you've identified a few changes which you want to do in the entire marketing process or in the customer experience process. How do you go about implementing that change? I think the first thing is to build a goal and objective for the change. Be very clear what you want to achieve and how will you achieve this and how will you measure the achievement. Then go into what is the strategy overall that you want to do, what is the tactic that you want to use, like build a program which is a collection of tactics or an execution plan if you want to call that, and then bring in a team and endorsement from senior leadership to go out and do it. Be very clear at every step, what are you measuring and how are you measuring it, and what each action should impact in that sense. One strategy that you can use for going through inflection points. So let's say, for example, you go through the process and you're not able to very clearly identify what are the customer experience points that I should change. Or you think that, okay, all looks well, where do I make the changes? Where is the scope for improvement? A good strategy to use for that is identifying inflection points. This is IDA cover on awareness, interest, desire, action, like very basic marketing theory, which probably is taught in basics of marketing. That any individual goes through these 4 or 5 steps before making a purchase. They find out about the product, they evaluate or develop interest about the product, then the interest grows stronger, they develop desire for the product, and then the action is probably buying, purchasing, using, and so on and so forth. At every step, there is an inflection point. An inflection point is where there is a need there's a shift in the need of the customer, either their aspiration or their social situation or their condition or something changes, which triggers a change of state and also triggers a set of marketing activities which can be potentially done at that point to direct a change of state. So let's say, for example, somebody who is right now aware of a car brand, right? When they're aware, how do you get awareness to a level that it becomes an interest? At what point will awareness become an interest? What is that inflection point? Maybe somebody who's gotten their first job, that's an inflection point. Maybe somebody whose car has just become 5 years old and they want to change it, that's an inflection point. Somebody who's gotten promoted is an inflection point. Again, these are things where the situation of the individual changes, where they are in the state of likelihood to move to the next stage. And that's where is an excellent point to interact or sort of interject with marketing and try and drive the behavior that you want as a brand. How to do it depends upon what are the brand strategies, what kind of team structure that we have, what are the actions that we want out of a brand. But essentially, these serve as good interjection points or inflection points for any digitization or transformation point to impact customer experience positively. Again, more about discovering inflection points. I think one of the critical things about inflection points is that you want to move through the loop of discovering inflection points quite quickly, which means that don't spend too much time evaluating what is the best inflection point. Rather, go through a loop quickly, which is basically see what is an inflection point, build out ideas, do a small pilot, which is code, develop, buy tools, etc., etc. And then just collect data if it's working or not. If it's working, then you scale it out. If it's not working, then you basically scale it down, right? At every point in time, what you need to be more focused on is understanding the impact of each change, which means first and foremost, obviously getting feedback from customers, also trying to meet users, doing customer behavior studies, using incentives to drive customer data collection, and so on and so forth. But eventually what you want to do is you want to get through these ideas as quickly as possible in the smallest impact as much as possible, so that you can eventually find out what works best for your customer experience map or your product, and then eventually scale that, invest more in that. Coming to content, as I had started off, I think one of the 4 pillars of building or disrupting marketing or transforming marketing is using content for transformation. Content is one of the most controllable things in a marketer's kitty, which means that you can directly control what goes out into the market. You can build out and direction content in the way that you want to, depending upon your interests, the needs of the marketing funnel, the needs of business, and so on and so forth. It is also directly controllable. So let's say, for example, versus team or structure or talent, content is generally more controllable, even more controllable than changes in customer experience or in tooling, because content is something which is quite limited to marketing as a as a business unit or as a function, rather than going across the company in that sense. So it becomes one of the easiest levers to pull when you want to transform. When I talk about content, content is not just blogs. It's not about case studies. It's not about blogs. Content is anything which goes out from your marketing team or from that brand to the customer. It is the headline on the ad, the SMS which you get on sort of transaction confirmation. It is the receipt that you give out to a customer. Everything is content, and everything is a place or a point of interaction which you can use to drive behavior which you want. A few examples of kind of content that are used in various stages of a customer's life cycle. On an awareness stage, you can use editorial content, expert content, educational content, white papers, and so on and so forth. When somebody moves to a consideration stage, you have video content, for example, you have interactions, webcasts, etc., educating people more about your product, particularly not the category, but just about your product, and trying to get them to interact with your product as much as possible. When they are at a decision stage, you want to get them to a live demo, you want to get them to a trial in that sense, you want to get them to a product comparison where you show what features sort of outsell your product and so forth. Each of this content has a very specific objective and an action which you want your customer to do at that particular point in stage. I come back again to the main thing that content is just not blogs. All of this is something which is a part of what content you produce and how and what stage each content is used in. If you look at the overall content cycle in that sense, right? I mean, eventually the entire strategy of content should cover these 4 strategies. You want to start attracting customers, you want to start converting them, then closing them, and then delighting them after their purchase so that you can make them into promoters. Quality and context is critical at every step, right? Every step in this inbound funnel today has a very specific action that you want that customer or prospect or even a stranger to do. And the content needs to drive that specific step at every step. The format of the content needs to ensure that that's possible, that is consumable by the customer. So for example, if it's a stranger and they get an email from you which has no connection, that's probably spam, right? So that means you want the customer to be in the right stage to get that content and be in the right environment to be able to act on that content. So if they're a lead or if they showed interest, that's when you will email them. But if they're a stranger, you will probably do social pushes, build viral content, build blogs, and so on and so forth. Which is what is more relevant to a stranger? Probably not that relevant to a customer because they already know a lot about your product and your category. Where to a customer you want to do social monitoring, making sure they have no problems. You want to do support surveys and stuff like that. That's how content changes format at every step. Having said that, content is key to each and everything. Content forms the basis of all marketing. So ensuring that we have the right format, right content, and right action item built into each piece of content is very critical to move people along the funnel. One of the basic things of content is your website. I think when people think about content, it's not about building blogs or content marketing or per se. I think the basis of all content starts from your website or your product brochure or your pamphlet, like whatever it is that you use to do mass sort of communication about your product. A good converting website is a very powerful asset for any brand today, particularly in the environment where all of our country is going through this digital revolution. Today, no segment of India is actually not touched by digital. There was a time, maybe 4 or 5 years back, where digital or online was a medium which was very affluent, semi-affluent, because people did not have internet access, or did not have smartphones, did not have laptops, computers, etc., etc. All of that has today changed. The penetration of smartphones in this country is quite high. The penetration of data in this country or access to internet is also quite high and growing rapidly, which means that in the coming future, digital will become a relevant and mainstay conversation medium for almost every segment of this country, which means a website is probably the most critical asset. Optimizing a website to convert more is a complex topic. But if you look at it in a basic, what a website does, it communicates a value proposition and creates a little bit of urgency to purchase. And this combination of value proposition, communication, and urgency is then converted into orders or purchase or so on and so forth, right? How do you do it? I think the two things which are very important for any website is to have relevancy and clarity of content. You should be able to tell people clearly what is your product, what are the benefits of the product, and how to go about it, and be relevant at all times in terms of a customer's state of mind. If a person is looking for a how to use product, it should be how to use content. They have already found out about what are the advantages of the product. That's why they are on the how to use page, right? So making sure the content is relevant, precise at that point is critical, so that they can understand it well, absorb it in the fastest possible manner. Attention spans online are quite low, so making sure that it is clear and relevant is very important. At the same time, ensuring there is less distraction and less frustration, less anxiety is also important, right? You don't want to sell 15 products on the same page, confusing the customer and making a choice. If they get confused, they're going to leave. As simple as that, right? Even if you look at today Amazon's flow, right? Recommendations and other things are actually in the bottom of the page. The first top part of the page is actually just very clearly dedicated to what is the product, what is the price, when does it get delivered, what are the features of the product, and so on and so forth. It's when you scroll down is when they start putting extra information. So very relevant and clear information top above, and then other information probably goes down below. How do you do it? Generally, again, it's more about website testing. You can talk to real-time visitors. Today you have chat bots and survey bots that you can use. You can ask for feedback in a forum, or you can just call up your customers who have purchased your product to come to you, do a focus group or an interview in that sense. Probably do a lunch session with a few customers. That always works, and people are more than happy to give feedback to you in that sense. This is an example of a good website, right? It's a very good converting homepage. It's from this company called Lead Formally. The good thing about this headline, and that's why I want to sort of give it out, because this is actually content optimization. This headline takes a lot of effort to create, but has a very high return rate. Getting the headline and the top copyright works magic in terms of optimizing for a website, converts a lot more than what a blog or a post can do. The beauty of this headline is basically starts with a why before going on to a how. It basically tells them or tells a visitor what they can get out of using this product very succinctly in about 7 or 8 words. And in the subheadline also tells them what is the product. It does not go into the how immediately. There's an entire website as you scroll down, or you can go to their website and see. But as you scroll down, you'll see the how is succinctly defined. How do you buy this product? What is the price of the product, etc., etc. But on the top, it just talks about why should you be purchasing this product, and the use of words basically capture and convert up to 300% more leads. Converts what the functionality of this product is within the headline itself. So it's about capturing and converting leads, two of the things which marketers are very sort of responsible for, aware of, or are problem areas in that. It puts a number, a very high number to give a sense of quality of the product, that we are a very good product. We don't do 5%, 10%, we actually do 3x more visitors, so that you get intrigued into, okay, what is that thing that gets me 300% more leads in that sense. Now we move into the last few bits of the session. We are about 5 or 7 minutes into the session. I think if there are people who have questions, they can write to me directly. I'll share my email at the end of it, or we can extend 5 more minutes into the chat and then go for it. But as we move into the last few channels, I want to talk a little bit about channels in marketing, right? I think marketing channels today is an ever-growing list. It's quite complex. New channels are getting created every day. Historically, it used to be just paid offline, the middle column, 5-7 channels, and then you kind of manage the media budget or media split according to these 5-7 channels, right? Today, it's about 15-20 channels, some of which are listed there. There is paid online, which is search, display, social, content, video, affiliates, and so on and so forth. There is a lot of earned media, which is influencer marketing, partnership marketing, SEO, PR in that sense, and the paid offline, which still remains, right? Channels can be quite overwhelming. And one of the complexities which comes with these channels is that how do you make sure that you as a marketer or as a brand or as a product are quite cohesive in your communication across all channels? It is when you become coefficient, or cohesive, is when you can take the best out of marketing. So 1 + 1 here is not 2, it's more than 1. 2 is what the message that I'm trying to do. And if you look at experience also, I mean, if you look at this example, for example, it's not a one team activity anymore, right? It's not one team which does radio advertising and TV advertising, which used to be a small marketing team across 4-5 channels, same bunch of 4-5 people who will do marketing, and that's it, right? Today, it's a very complex setup in marketing, right? Let's hypothetically take an example of a travel website, right? So an individual comes and reads an article which the SEO team built about 10 most romantic locations in the UK. The visitor finds the page, which the SEO team or the content team build, lands on it. The visitor is then tagged and counted and tracked, because that's what content got you, and data analytics can now show you how much traffic is there, how many users have you interacted with, so on and so forth. That particular individual then sees an ad of your website, because now you can track cookies and sees a great travel offer. That's what your performance marketing team would be doing, or digital marketing team would be doing probably. The visitor then clicks an ad which was geo-targeted. So which means that they saw a CRM targeted ad or a banner on the website when they land on the homepage, which has tickets to Paris, which was an offer on tickets to Paris, and purchases ticket, right? One particular transaction went through 4 different departments. And if these 4 departments don't work together as a team, this transaction would have never happened. If content was bad, the person would have never come. If tracking was not happening, you could not show a paid ad. If the offer on the paid ad was not great, the person would not have clicked. If the offer on the homepage was not great, or the message on the homepage was not good, the person would not have brought tickets, right? It is very important to make sure that multiple teams within a marketing setup or a marketing organization work together with a single objective. That objective needs to be shared and understood by all the teams, and all teams need to be structured and aligned in a way that they can function as one unit. Generally, it's not that easy. Teams generally go across multiple stages. In a traditional environment where teams were working in silos majorly, it starts with building a little bit of communication within the teams. You set up joint team meetings, joint project plans, and so on and so forth. Eventually, you get into a place where digital starts being a center of excellence, or a specialized team, or a specialized role within each of these functions. And slowly, it gets into a hub and spoke model where the digital center of excellence then starts coordinating with other functions, to a time when the company realizes that digital is not just a hub anymore, or it's not a center of excellence anymore. It's a part of every activity that we do. And then each individual team transforms itself into a digital unit per se, or a digitally enabled unit to work across as one unit. That's the stage where you want to get to as marketing leaders or marketing managers, because that is where 1 + 1 is more than 2. The last section of this presentation today, or of the session today, is on technology and tooling. I won't go into the specifics of what technology should you adopt, what tools should you adopt. I think that is a very broad conversation and very dependent upon what use case is there, what is the capability of the organization, and so on and so forth. But I would say, what is the basic map of how you should adopt tooling for an organization? If you're starting a new marketing team, if you're starting a new company, how you should adopt technology, right? The first is get the basic functions in place, right? Get a web site in place, get a content management system in place, integrate Google Analytics and tracking. I think getting an email and CRM system in place. Basics need to come in first. Don't go very fancy. There is a lot of marketing technology which is available, which is doing wonderful things. But you need to get your basics first. Get the basic platforms set up. Get your teams trained on those basic platforms. Training on platforms is as critical as implementing the platform, because if you don't train people, they're not going to use those platforms, and then you don't get the results which you had expected or were promised when buying those platforms. And then come to a stage where you are almost fully utilizing the capabilities of the platform. That means you have a CRM system which can do trigger-based communication, can send personalized emails, your website is getting tracked properly, so on and so forth. You now can build a basic functional, digitally enabled environment for marketing. The next is, what about new products? There is so much technology which is getting developed each day. The best way to go about it is actually in pilots. Start small, start with small experiments and pilots, which you can do without much integration or without much disruption to the basic setup today, and start doing as many of them as possible. Start figuring out what works for your product, what works for your team, what your team is more comfortable with, what your existing system can integrate very well into, and start figuring out what pilots are working there. And only then, very slowly and carefully, adopt new tools. Every new tool that you add exponentially complicates your marketing setup and also puts more pressure on your team to now know more tools, understand more capabilities, be masters in sort of operating new systems and so on and so forth. Don't put on those pressures on your team ad hocly. Be very careful, adopt, evaluate, and only then roll it out across. The last line being outsource wherever possible. Marketing as an ecosystem is filled with talented agencies and vendors who can work with you and do wonderful things. I think utilizing them is something which is very good for marketing teams because it keeps them focused on the core goals rather than being hassled with new technology or things which are breaking all the time and so on and so forth. One point which I want to leave with is companies where they have a lot of legacy technology. There, the best strategy to work with is run independent projects which have less inter-system dependency. So you can't roll out a project which is connected to 5 different systems. Each one has their own development cycle. Some are slow, some are fast, etc., etc. But you can pick up 2 systems where you can make changes quite fast. And you want to start with projects which are on those systems, and then do a different timeline for systems which are slower in this. The other thing here which works really well is outsourcing. If somebody else can do it for you without integrating into systems, that's always better for legacy systems. Winding up, coming to the last slide, I think this is one leaving thought which I wanted to sort of leave this audience with. Any change, any transformation can be both incremental or disrupting. Incremental is when you keep tweaking it, keep increasing it with 5%, 10%, so on and so forth. But that's the best place possible. I think disrupting change is what gets you to the peak of what you can achieve. So don't be bound into the tweaking cycle. That let's make this subject line even a little bit better, so somebody else will open our emails more, or let's get our homepage slightly better so that more people click the purchase button or add to cart button. I think those are things which are important. It's a continuous mechanism, but never lose your focus on the fact that a better disrupting change might even do this entire thing multiple times better. You will never find this out unless you actually open yourselves to do things, right? Be open to large radical changes. They're not easy to do. You will get a pushback within your team. It's a risk that at times people do, but unless you're open to them, somebody is going to outcompete you, and suddenly you'll realize that you've been sort of out of business or declining market share and so on and so forth. So be open to radical changes at all points in time. I think that's about it from me. We have a few minutes left. I think we're actually on time, but we can stretch by a few minutes if people have questions. Before that, I just wanted to share my contact details with people. I am easily reachable on email, LinkedIn, and Twitter. I'm quite responsive over email and LinkedIn. So in case we're not able to take questions or you want to reach out to me after the session, feel free to either write to me or add me on LinkedIn, follow me on Twitter, and write to me there. I might not be able to take all the questions, but let me at least start taking a few of them. I'm going to pause this session for 1 second and read through the questions, and then we can go into it. Just 1 second. On question. First question, content, can your presentation be considered as content from Uber's marketing team? No, this is my personal views and will always be my personal views on marketing, not at all related or a message from Uber. I'm going to skip the question on Uber's particular app and keep it running only to marketing for now. A question on customer personas, how do you ensure that you are not intruding customers' personal space? It seems it's quite easy to slip into personal space while creating personas. I think what is important at all times in terms of customer personas is what are those various facets of life which you think can impact decision making. I think that's the starting point, right? Obviously, if you are selling car, maybe what food they eat is not that relevant to a persona, right? And that's something which you want to be clear on. What are the possible influencing factors in a particular individual's life which might interact with your customer experience map? Once you're clear of that, that is what will become the focus of your customer persona or customer persona research person, let's say. On the question of intruding personal space, I think all focus groups, research, etc., does intrude into personal space a little bit. That is why we have permission forms, legal forms, etc., to ensure that people allow us to do that. A lot of times people are more than happy to share their feedback. I think we all want brands to improve, products to improve, and if our feedback would help them improve, people are more than happy to do that. But yes, understanding what facets can potentially be impacting will ensure that you don't get too down into personas. From Rajan, on customer journey map, on the payment part, do we also analyze the customer paying capacity? The reason I'm asking is that insurance generally do hard selling and they don't care about customers' financial profile. And which is also a reason why in online insurance companies are doing that well. Because I think paying capacity is a part of the persona of the customer. A financial capacity or financial background or affluence background is all core to a segment. If a person can't pay for a big car, then pitching the big car is never going to get to them. They're not going to buy because they can't do that. So it's a very important criteria, paying capacity. If you look at our SEC classification in India, which is very popularly used, it is based on income levels and cities that you live in. So amount of money that you make has been the core of all segmentation strategies that are there. So yes, definitely payment capacity is it there. The question from Preeti, it's on customer journey map, how can we capture customers' feeling? Is it through feedback forms? Not just feedback forms. I think customer feelings are across all kinds of research. Generally, qualitative research is not good. So like very qualitative survey forms, etc., are not that good for capturing customer feelings. It's more in conversation where you will get them in interviews, you will get them on a Skype session. You might be just observing them from a two-way mirror or that kind of research rooms, etc., are there, or just get them in a comfortable zone on a lunch or on an evening session and get them to start talking. There are agencies, vendors who are experts in this. If that's something which you think is tough for your company or your team to do, you can always utilize market research vendors who can come out and help on this. More questions. I think we are sort of done with all the major questions. Yeah. Anything else which anybody else wanted to ask? Take home from the session is know why as a key driver to implement know how. Thank you so much. Negative TRP is also a criteria people use for marketing. What is your opinion on that? My opinion is try and stay away from that as much as possible. I think the objective of marketing is to build positive experiences as much as possible. What doesn't work is good to know, but don't treat it as a strategy. Two-way mirror seems like a good idea. It actually happens. I can tell you that. There are sessions which happen that. Talking about startup, most of the organizations look for an experienced one. What shall a beginner do? In terms of beginning for marketing, I think one is understanding the basic. There is a lot of content, educational resources which are now available. One thing I do promote to all the beginners out there is just experiment yourselves. I think I personally have learned a lot from self-learning, right? I mean, when I was in B school, probably Facebook advertising was not the biggest thing, but I learned it by doing it myself. I just started blogging, and then I figured out how to, drive traffic to my blog, how does SEO work, and so on and so forth, right? So the beauty of the digital age is that starting a product or a service today, just to even experiment and learn for it is not that hard. And what you learn by doing is generally of better quality than what you would theoretically learn. So I know a lot of developers or designers who build their own portfolios, who keep coding on and building their own projects, etc., because that's a part of learning process for them. I think as marketers, that's something which is a good idea for us also to keep on doing. What else? Is technical qualification a must for a marketing professional? Not exactly. I don't think technical qualifications are a must. Marketing is something which is quite sort of intuitive if you are following a right path. I do think that it is worth investing in reading a few theory books. Marketing theory helps you structure your thoughts into how you should act and how you should sort of approach a particular customer problem or an experience problem. So going through theory is helpful, but as such, technical qualification is not there. One thing which I would recommend is spending a little bit of time in analytics. You don't need to be a data scientist for that, but you do need to understand how basic customer research happen, how basic marketing research happens, so that you can be enabled to get conclusive findings and learnings from anything that you experiment with. So understanding those basics are important, but that doesn't mean that you have to go to the bottom of it. You just need to know what it means and how to use that tool in that sense. Apart from that, I think we are all done. So differentiate between strategy and tactic. I think strategy is an overall plan. What is a high level sort of a objective that you want to get to? So let's say, for example, I want to improve my online marketing activities, or let's say my Google ads or my Facebook ads are not performing that well, right? There can be multiple strategies around that. One strategy is improve segmentation. The other strategy is improve content quality. Improving segmentation, let's pick up that. The tactic would be using more demographic information. Today, if I was not targeting by age, one tactic of improving segmentation is let's target people only in the age group of 20 to 35 for that matter. That's the exact thing which you do to implement that strategy. I am a digital marketer. Please suggest me, should I continue the job or should I start pursuing digital marketing course through distance learning? To be honest, I can't answer this question. I would need to understand a little bit more background from where you are in terms of this thing. Basically, tactics taken together define a strategy. No, tactics taken together achieve a strategy as such. I think that's about it. That's all the questions I'm going to take right now. But as you have in front of you my contact details, please feel free to write to me. I am always happy to reach out to or be reached out from people who want to know more about marketing, who are just starting off their careers in marketing or have been at quite a progress in that. Always happy to have a good discussion on anything related to marketing or how do you improve yourself as a marketer in that sense. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I'm not able to take all the new comments which are coming in. And thank you to NMIMS for giving this opportunity. I would end it here. Thank you so much. Just one second.
Well, thank you, Mr. Girish Singh. In fact, it was quite an insightful session on digital marketing and digitization of the entire concept that we see today. I'm sure everyone across the board has had a great experience while we see it across the comments. So as Mr. Singh has also shared his credentials, I'm just typing the central email address in case if any of the participants have any questions, you can write into ngasc@nmims.edu. And stay tuned for more such sessions, and we'll be sending you the recording for the session today for your future reference. And see you guys soon. Have a nice week ahead. Thank you.